Embark on a journey to explore the intriguing histories of the most dangerous female prisoners. Prepare to be captivated by the accounts of crime, manipulation, and horror. Brace yourself for a chilling exploration of the depths of human nature, where seemingly ordinary women transform into infamous criminals. Here are the 10 most dangerous female prisoners. Number 10. Typhoid Mary. History will remember Mary Mallon as a woman who found herself at the center of a rather peculiar predicament that earned her the notorious nickname of Typhoid Mary. Mary, an immigrant who had arrived in the United States in 1883, worked as a domestic servant, primarily as a cook. Somewhere along the way, she became a host for the typhoid bacterium. From 1900 to 1907, nearly 24 people fell ill with this dreadful disease in households where Mary worked her culinary magic. To understand how the work of Mary as a cook had infected these people, let's talk about the nature of typhoid fever. The disease is caused by the bacterium Salmonella typhi, which primarily spreads through contaminated food and water. However, some infected individuals can transmit the bacteria even if they display no symptoms. This was the case for Mary. She was a healthy carrier of this disease. Curiously, each time Mary started her employment in a new household, it seemed like the illness would mysteriously follow her. Unfortunately, by the time the source of the outbreak was traced back to her, Mary would have vanished into thin air. The situation reached a tipping point in 1906 when 6 out of 11 people in a household in Oyster Bay, New York, fell victim to typhoid fever after Mary's arrival. Concerned by this alarming outbreak, the household owners sought the help of an investigator named George Soper. He was an expert in studying typhoid fever epidemics. Together with other investigators, they unraveled the puzzle and discovered that contaminated water was likely the cause of the outbreak. However, Mary continued to hop from one cooking gig to another, seemingly oblivious to the havoc she unintentionally unleashed. Finally, in 1907, as the winter chill settled upon Manhattan, Mary resurfaced in a Park Avenue home. Unfortunately, this time, tragedy struck, and a death from the disease occurred in that very household. It was at this crucial moment that George Soper crossed paths with Mary. He connected the dots and attributed all 22 recorded cases of typhoid fever in New York City and the Long Island area to her unwitting role as a carrier. Fearing the spread of further outbreaks, authorities cornered Mary, who attempted to evade capture. However, this time, there was no escape. They finally caught up with her and promptly had her committed to an isolation center on the secluded North Brother Island. Despite Mary's plea to the United States Supreme Court, she remained confined there until 1910 under the condition that she would never again handle food professionally. But as fate would have it, the story of Typhoid Mary didn't end there. 4 years later, as if straight out of a twisted tale, George Soper found himself on Mary's trail once again. An epidemic erupted at a sanatorium in Newfoundland, New Jersey, and at Sloan Maternity Hospital in Manhattan. And guess who had been working as a cook at both places? That's right, Mary Mallon. This time, she was discovered in a suburban home in Westchester County, New York. Mary was promptly returned to her isolated abode on North Brother Island, where she spent the remainder of her days. Number 9. Elizabeth Bathory. Countess Elizabeth Bathory was a woman with a rather unique hobby, serial killing. She gained quite a reputation for herself during the late 15th and early 16th centuries, torturing and taking the lives of young girls. But believe it or not, her twisted behavior may have had its roots in her disturbing childhood. Elizabeth was born on August 7, 1560, into a wealthy aristocratic family in Nyírbátor, Hungary. Now you might think growing up in luxury would be a dream, but her household was strict, filled with physical punishment left and right. As a child, she had violent mood swings, painful migraines, as well as multiple seizures that may have been caused by epilepsy. To cure her epilepsy, her family resorted to an, interesting method. They allegedly smeared servants' blood on her lips. Yes, you heard that right. This peculiar remedy may have sparked her strange fascination with blood. Growing up, she became fixated on the idea of violence, finding joy in watching her father's soldiers train, and even once laughing at the sight of a man sewn up inside a horse's belly. Quite the peculiar sense of humor, wouldn't you say? Now, even with her disturbing tendencies, Elizabeth still had expectations to fulfill. At the tender age of 15, she was married off to Count Ferenc Nadasdy, a member of another wealthy and influential family. But little did anyone know that this marriage would reveal Elizabeth's true colors. With her husband frequently away on military duties, Elizabeth was left in charge of their estate. It was during this time that she began her twisted hobby of torturing and taking the lives of young girls who who worked as servants in her household. She even went as far as drinking and bathing in the blood of her victims, especially virgins, believing it had magical powers to maintain her youth and beauty forever. Talk about a gruesome beauty regimen. It is estimated that she took the lives of more than 600 girls during her reign of terror. Now, you might wonder how she managed to get away with all of this for so long. Some speculate that her noble status shielded her from prosecution, while others believe her connections to the royal family granted her immunity. Well, justice eventually caught up with her. In 1610, she was finally arrested and put on trial for her crimes. Unsurprisingly, she was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. The remainder of her days were spent locked away in a tiny room within her castle until her death in 1614. The sinister acts of the Countess have left a lasting impression on popular culture. Her alleged sadism has inspired countless films, plays, operas, television shows, and even video games. Number 8. Amelia Dyer. Next on our list is Amelia Elizabeth Dyer, a notorious lady who specialized in taking the lives of infants. Born in 1837 to a shoemaker in a village in Bristol, Dyer had quite a challenging upbringing, caring for her mentally ill mother all by herself. Now, you would think that as an adult, she might put her nurturing skills to good use, perhaps as a nurse, right? Well, think again. Instead of providing care, she embarked on a rather evil career. You see, during Victorian times in England, there was this thing called baby farming. It was a way for desperate single mothers who were considered immoral and couldn't go to workhouses to get rid of their babies discreetly. For a fee, baby farmers would offer to take the children off their hands and promise to provide a safe and loving home for them. That's where Dyer comes into play. In 1869, she started advertising in local papers, assuring parents that their children would be well taken care of. Instead of providing a safe haven, Dyer would take the fee and take the lives of the babies. She used horrifying methods like starvation, drugging them with beverages laced with opium or even strangulation. Most babies under her care would meet their tragic end within days or sometimes hours. The parents had no idea what was really happening. They believed they were giving their little ones a chance at a happy home. Dyer's luck ran out briefly in 1879, when doctors grew suspicious of the unusually high number of deaths under her care. She was sentenced to 6 months of hard labor for neglect. You would think that punishment would make her reconsider her actions, right? Nope. As soon as she was released, she changed her approach. Moving to Reading in 1895, Dyer realized involving doctors to issue death certificates was a risky move, so she took matters into her own hands and started disposing of the bodies herself. How, you ask? Well, she simply tossed them into the River Thames, but this method would eventually seal her fate. Dyer's crimes were discovered when authorities traced an infant's body found in the Thames back to Mrs. Thomas, one of Dyer's many aliases. When they raided her place, the stench of human remains overwhelmed them, although no bodies were found at that time. In March of 1896, Dyer faced trial at the Old Bailey, where she tried to plead insanity. However, it took the jury less than 5 minutes to see through her charade and pronounce her guilty. While she confessed to only taking one life, based on estimates and her years of activity, it is believed that she took the lives of anywhere between 200 to 400 children. In June 18, 96, Dyer met her ultimate punishment, the hangman's noose, and thus the tale of Amelia Elizabeth Dyer came to an end, leaving behind a haunting legacy of unimaginable evil. Number 7. Aileen Warnos. Next on our list is a woman who truly made her mark in the world, although in the most chilling way possible. Her name was Aileen Warnos, and boy, was she quite the character. Born on February 29, 1956, in Rochester, Michigan, she started off on a path that would leave a haunting legacy. Aileen had a childhood that could rival the darkest of horror stories. Her parents called it quits even before she came into this world, and her father, unfortunately, ended up in a mental hospital for child molestation. When Aileen was just 4 years old, she and her brother were sent to live with their grandparents. Aileen's grandmother was rumored to be an alcoholic, while her grandfather was, well, let's just say he had a knack for violence that would send shivers down anyone's spine. As Aileen entered her rebellious teenage years, she found herself at a home for unwed mothers, and as if that wasn't enough to shake things up, she then decided to drop out of school and ventured into the world of prostitution. Yep, you heard it right. Aileen had quite the unconventional career choice. Fast forward to 1974, and Aileen found herself behind bars for driving while intoxicated, and even firing a gun from a moving vehicle. As the years rolled on, Aileen's rap sheet grew longer than a consumer value store receipt. street. Armed robbery, check forgery, auto theft, you name it, she dabbled in it. By the late 1980s, she became somewhat of a wandering soul, drifting from place to place with no clear direction in life. Then, in 1989, the world was introduced to Aileen's dark side. Posing as a hitchhiking prostitute, she took the lives of 7 middle-aged male motorists, leaving their bodies scattered along the highways of Florida and southern Georgia. Some even speculate that she may have claimed an 8th victim during the same period. As news of Aileen's acts spread, she earned herself the haunting title of America's first female serial killer, not exactly the accolade one aspires to achieve. Soon after her arrest in 1991, she confessed to the killings, but here's the twist. She claimed it was all self-defense. Aileen's supporters hailed her as a strong, independent woman, even going so far as to consider her a heroic figure who defended herself against male aggression. Talk about a divided opinion. Now here's the part that really sends shivers down your spine. Aileen wasted no time in capitalizing on her notoriety. Right after her arrest, she sold the rights to her story, captivating the media and ensuring her tale would reach every corner of the world. Her case sparked nationwide discussions on the relationship between gender and violence, as well as the legal treatment of self-defense actions by women. In 1992, Aileen was convicted of one of the murders and slapped with the death sentence. Eventually, she pleaded guilty to 3 more killings and admitted that she had committed these gruesome acts for profit, not self-defense. In 2002, Aileen was executed by lethal injection. Her life story was the subject of many documentaries and a 2003 movie titled Monster. Number 6. Myra Hindley. Myra Hindley was a woman who gained infamy as the most evil woman in Britain. Born on July 23, 1942, in Manchester, England, Hindley had a rather unconventional upbringing under the care of her grandmother. After the loss of a close male friend at the age of 15, Hindley made some major life choices. She waved goodbye to school and embraced Roman Catholicism with open arms. In 1961, she crossed paths with Ian Brady, a stock clerk fresh out of prison. Love blossomed, but little did Hindley realize that this would lead her down a treacherous road of complete submission to Brady's twisted desires. Brady, testing Hindley's devotion, plotted acts of unspeakable horror to abuse and take the lives of 5 children. In July of 1963, their dark journey began with the abduction and murder of 16-year-old Pauline Reed. Just 4 months later, 12-year-old John Kilbride vanished without a trace. In June 1964, 12-year-old Keith Bennett met a similar fate, but the horrifying acts didn't stop there. On the afternoon of Boxing Day in 1964, 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey disappeared from a local fairground, never to be seen again. Now, here's where things take a turn. In October 1965, the duo's secret world was exposed thanks to Hindley's brave 17-year-old brother-in-law, David Smith. You see, Smith had witnessed the unimaginable. He saw Brady taking the life of 17-year-old Edward Evans with an axe, all while fearing for his own life. But despite his fear, Smith found the courage to go to the police and spill the beans. The wheels of justice began to turn, and Hindley and Brady found themselves in the courtroom on April 27, 1966. They pleaded not guilty to the murders of Evans, Downey, and Kilbride, but the truth could not be concealed. Brady was convicted of 3 counts of murder, while Hindley, on the other hand, was found guilty of 2 counts of murder. Both were sentenced to life behind bars, forever locked away from society. In 1970, Hindley made a bold move. She severed all ties with Brady and began a relentless battle to prove her innocence. She claimed she had no involvement in the crimes that stained her name. However, in 1987, Hindley found herself back in the spotlight as her full confession was released to the public. In it, she admitted her involvement in all 5 murders. Her desperate attempts for parole were met with resounding denials, and so the tale of Myra Hindley came to an end on November 16, 2002, when she succumbed to respiratory failure at the age of 60. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Check out this image of a woman wearing prison overalls. She has a commanding presence that makes you think twice about crossing her. What do you think she might have done to end up here? Do you think she has committed crimes similar to the females that we have introduced you to in this video? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Number 5. Nanny DOSS. Prepare to meet a woman whose innocent smile masks a chilling secret. Allow me to introduce you to Nanny DOSS, also known as the Giggling Granny. Born in 1905 in the town of Blue Mountain, Calhoun County, between Anniston and Jacksonville, Nanny appeared to be just like any other girl. However, her childhood was far from blissful. Growing up with her parents, Jim and Louisa Hazel, she faced constant abuse and demanding chores on the family farm. Education was a luxury, as Jim would keep her and her siblings away from school for long periods of time. But things took an even darker turn when Nanny suffered a head injury at the tender age of 7 while riding a train. She claimed this injury was the catalyst for her future destructive behavior. In her pursuit of romantic fantasies, Nanny found solace in the pages of romantic magazines. Daydreaming about her ideal future, she believed love would be her salvation. At 16, she married her first husband, Charlie Braggs, whom she worked with at a linen factory. Unfortunately, her dreams of a fairy tale romance were shattered, as Charlie turned out to be a mama's boy, living under the watchful eye of his clingy mother. She had 4 daughters with Charlie, but 2 of them fell victim to arsenic poisoning. Following this, Charlie ended their marriage. Charlie later revealed that he was too scared of Nanny, and that was why they got separated. Undeterred by her tumultuous past, Nanny took to the Lonely Hearts column in the newspaper, seeking her true love. The profile of a man named Robert Franklin soon caught her eye. They got talking, and by 1929, they were married. Alas, Nanny's hopes were crushed once more as she discovered that Robert was an alcoholic. She eventually put rat poison in his whiskey jar, taking his life. Refusing to give up on love, Nanny returned to the Lonely Hearts column and encountered Arlie Lanning. They met, fell in love during a journey to North Carolina, and tied the knot swiftly. However, Arlie, like her previous husbands, was an alcoholic and a womanizer. Well, just like her former husband, Arlie also died. The reason for his death was reported to be heart failure. Nanny wasted no time in claiming the insurance money. She then sought refuge with her sister named Dovey. Dovey died shortly after her arrival. Nanny's 4th husband, Richard Morton, also met a tragic end, a deadly poisoning that further cemented her sinister reputation. Nanny's crimes were finally exposed when her last husband, Samuel Doss, died suddenly. During the autopsy, doctors discovered a lethal amount of arsenic in his body. The police were quickly alerted. Nanny was arrested and charged with murder. In police custody, Nanny shockingly confessed to not only the murders of her husbands, but also the killings of her sister, mother, and grandson. However, the case focused solely on Samuel's death, and she managed to evade charges for the others. When initially questioned about harming her husband, Nanny's response was laughter, deeming the inquiry ridiculous. During her trial, Nanny's demeanor was anything but remorseful. She giggled and flirted with the policeman. Ultimately, Nanny was sentenced to life imprisonment, her laughter silenced within the confines of her cell. She passed away of leukemia in 1965. Number 4, Maria Licciardi. Meet Maria Licciardi, a petite lady with a big presence in the mafia world. Known as La Piccoletta, or the Little One, due to her small stature, she rose to power as the boss of a notorious Camorra clan. The gang is said to be active in Secondigliano, a rundown neighborhood in Naples, Italy. Maria took charge of the clan after her brother Gennaro, also known as La Simia the Monkey, met his demise behind bars in 1994. Determined to keep the family business alive, Licciardi united an informal coalition of 20 other Camorra groups under her command. With this coalition known as the Secondigliano Alliance, Maria expanded their control over Naples. The alliance grew stronger and more organized during her leadership. But alas, every empire has its downfall. In the year 2000, the alliance's unity crumbled when a fierce and deadly feud erupted between Licciardi's crew and the LaRusso family. The trigger, an alleged drug shipment, which ignited a street battle in Naples that saw over 50 deaths attributed to the feud. By 2001, Maria found herself among Italy's top 30 most wanted fugitives. A year later, she was finally apprehended and thrown behind bars. But don't count her out just yet. Licciardi's time in prison was merely a pause in her story. In 2009, she was released and wasted no time getting back into the game. In a daring move that went against the organization's code, Maria added prostitution to Camorra's business empire. Reports suggest that the clan would acquire women, some of them underage, from the Albanian mafia. These unfortunate souls arrived with dreams of legitimate work, seeking to escape the poverty-stricken confines of their homeland. However, their hopes were shattered as they found themselves trapped in a life of forced prostitution under the watchful eye of the Camorra. In August of 2021, Licciardi, at the age of 71, was apprehended while attempting to flee to Spain. Then, on March 15, 2023, the final verdict was delivered. Licciardi, found guilty of leading the Camorra clan, was sentenced to 12 years and 8 months behind bars. Number 3, Beverly Allen. Nurses provide care and comfort, but Beverly Allen, a former nurse, had a different agenda. Known as the Angel of Death, she is one of Britain's most notorious female serial killers. Despite her track record of poor attendance and failed nursing exams, fate led her to a temporary 6-month stint at the understaffed Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in Lincolnshire back in 1991. When she started, there were only 2 trained nurses on the day shift and 1 for nights. Now, Allen's spree began in the children's ward 4 of the hospital. hospital. Over a span of 59 days, the 22-year-old nurse targeted 13 innocent children. These young victims had initially been admitted to the hospital for minor ailments like chest infections or gastroenteritis. But instead of receiving the care they deserved, they inexplicably went into cardiac arrest. 4 precious lives were lost. It was only after the 4th victim, a 15-month-old child named Claire Peck, tragically passed away, that suspicions arose among the medical staff. The hospital, alarmed by the unusually high number of cardiac arrests on the ward, swiftly called the police. Allett was the only nurse working at the time of all the attacks. During the investigation, the authorities discovered that Allett had administered dangerous doses of insulin to at least 2 victims. In another incident, a large air bubble was found in the body of yet another victim. However, piecing together the details of all 13 attacks remained a challenge for the police. After a lengthy trial, the truth about Allett's dark deeds came to light. She was found guilty of 4 murders and 9 counts of causing grievous bodily harm with intent. But that's not all. Brace yourself for the psychological twist. Psychiatrists who examined Allett diagnosed her with Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a mental illness that compelled her to harm others to gain attention or sympathy. In 1993, the gavel of justice came down, and Allett received 13 life sentences with a minimum of 13 years. She now resides at Rampton Secure Hospital in Nottinghamshire, which is a high-security psychiatric hospital. Number 2. Judy Buenoano. Judy Buenoano, better known as the Black Widow, was a woman who weaved a web of deception, manipulation, and, dare I say, deadly mischief. Born on April 4, 1943 in Quanah, Texas, she left a trail of chaos and tragedy in her wake. Back in 1962, Judy had a son named Michael when she married James Goodyear, a United States Air Force officer. But hold on tight, because just 3 months after James returned from his Vietnam tour, he mysteriously fell ill and passed away at the United States Naval Hospital in Orlando. And guess who happily collected the life insurance benefits? You got it. Judy fast forward to 1972, and Judy had a new love interest named Bobby Joe Morris. Together, they moved to Colorado. However, history repeated itself when Bobby Joe fell ill and succumbed to the same mysterious symptoms that James Goodyear had before his death. And yes, Judy collected benefits yet again on not 1, not 2, but 3 different life insurance policies taken out on Bobby Joe's life. In the year 1979, Judy's own son, Michael, joined the Army. However, his health took a nosedive, and the doctors diagnosed him with arsenic poisoning. This affected his upper and lower limbs. Michael ended up with heavy metal leg braces, but that's not the end of it. Shortly after this, Judy took Michael canoeing on the East River. The canoe ended up capsizing, and Michael drowned, burdened by his braces. Judy received a sum of $20,000 from his military life insurance policy. Soon after this, Judy opened a beauty salon in Gulf Breeze and began dating a man by the name of John Gentry. Love was in the air, or so it seemed. Judy managed to convince John that they should take out life insurance policies on each other. A month after this, John caught a cold. To nurse him back to health, Judy prescribed vitamin C capsules. Little did he know they were more lethal than a cold could ever be. Nausea and vomiting plagued poor John, landing him in the hospital. And shortly after he recovered and was discharged, his car mysteriously exploded. Luckily for John, he escaped with his life. When investigators searched Judy's home, they stumbled upon a startling discovery, a collection of wires and tape in her bedroom that matched the remains of the bomb found in John's car. The trial of Judy in 1984 gripped the entire nation. The prosecution presented a compelling case, detailing her methodical poisonings and her motive of financial gain. Justice was served, as Judy received a 12-year sentence for the John Gentry case, a life sentence for the Michael Goodyear case, and a death sentence for the James Goodyear case. She tried to appeal, but all her pleas fell on deaf ears. On March 30th, 1998, Judy faced the electric chair at the Florida State Prison, marking the end of her dark and deadly chapter. Number 1. Irina Viktorovna Gaidamachuk. Finally, we arrive at our number 1 most dangerous female prisoner. Prepare yourself for the disturbing tale of Irina Viktorovna Gaidamachuk, a Russian serial killer who earned herself the less-than-flattering nickname Satan in a Skirt. Now, let's be clear, this is not your average woman next door. Irina's story began in Nyagen, an old Soviet Union town in the northwest of Russia. From a young age, Irina's parents struggled to keep her in line, especially since they were alcoholics. As she entered her teenage years, her taste for mischief life expanded, and she developed a fondness for swigging vodka as if it were her daily multivitamin. In search of a fresh start, she moved to Krasnofimsk, a whole day's journey away from her hometown. Little did anyone know this new location would become the backdrop for her deadly exploits. She got married, had 2 children, and unfortunately embarked on a sickening killing spree that earned her yet another unflattering moniker, the Monster of Krasnofimsk. Now, Irina's motive for the murders was to fuel her insatiable vodka dependence. Even her husband Yuri admitted he never suspected his wife had a murderous streak, although her fondness for alcohol did cause some tension within the family. In fact, Yuri got so worried about her spending their hard-earned cash on booze that he cut off her access to money. But alas, it was the sweet nectar of alcohol that drove Irina to kill. Her first victim was an elderly woman whom she kindly assisted in crossing the road with her shopping bags. Grateful for the help, the old lady invited Irina into her home. Little did she know that she had invited pure evil. With a swift blow from a vase, Irina took the old woman's life. Following this, she looked around for cash. She only made away with 20 pounds sterling. From that moment on, her murderous spree spiraled out of control. The police, blinded by their assumption that a man was behind the killings, failed to connect the dots. Meanwhile, Irina strutted through town, casually carrying a hammer in her handbag, carefully selecting lonely elderly individuals as her next targets. To gain their trust, she posed as a social worker before unleashing her deadly blows with a hammer or axe, leaving a trail of terror in her wake. Her victims ranged from 61 to 89 years old, but all good, or in this case, horrific things must come to an end. In 2010, one of Irina's victims, Bilbinur Maksheva, miraculously survived the brutal assault. She reported the ordeal to the police, who were stunned to discover that a woman was behind the attacks. Finally, in June 2010, Irina's reign of terror came crashing down as she was arrested. 2 years later, in 2012, she was handed a 20-year prison sentence for her involvement in 17 murders and 1 attempted murder. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.